Chapter 505 Psychic Element vs. Psychic Element. The demoness was agitated. She had set up a plan to kill the incredibly powerful fiery sorceress, while both Zhao Yulin and Shi Guo were unable to break free from her control. She initially thought the rest of the weaklings would run for their lives. To her surprise, they had teamed up against her instead. "Who do you think you are?" screamed the demoness. The cloth on her face was ripped apart as the force she exerted was too strong. The white cloth fell to the ground, revealing a face that had changed beyond recognition. Her scorched facial features were eerily melted together. It was the face of a monster. However, regardless of how ugly, disgusting, and miserable she had become, no one would show her any compassion, as inside the disgusting body lay an even more corrupt heart that was fully rotten. Her third element was earth. "Watch out for her eyes," Nanyu reminded them immediately. The demoness used to be an infamous criminal around the Dunhuang region. Many magicians had died at her hands, including the military instructor whom Nanyu respected the most, so she already knew the demoness elements. The demoness was already diverting her attention to handle two sides. She was using her curse element to control Zhao Yulin, and her psychic element to control the 8 magicians to handle Shi Guo. The only element left was the earth element. The earth element did not have many destructive spells. The basic spell was earth element. The intermediate spell was rock barrier. One was used for movement, while the other was for defense. However, the advanced spell, petrify, was an absolutely terrifying killing spell. The only ones left that were still able to battle were the young intermediate magicians. Petrify was extremely deadly to them. Once they were turned into statues, they would not be able to preserve their lives. As Nanyu predicted, the demoness jumped onto the burning debris in another direction. Brown star patterns were forming a 3-dimensional structure surrounding the demoness. As each of the stars and their orbits began to emit a tremendous glow, the demoness' eyes had turned into the terrifying eyes of Medusa. Eyes of Medusa, able to turn anyone staring into them into lifeless statues. The demoness petrify was fired in an arc. The group could see a layer of gray-white shadow spreading in their direction rapidly. Both the wooden debris on the ground and the water sprinkling out from the fountain was completely turned into stone, including the water drops. The force of petrify spread rapidly, aiming to turn Mo Fan, Xinxia, and Zhao Manyan into lifeless statues. The gray-white shadow was less than 100 meters away. "Stand behind me." Zhao Manyan stepped in front of Mo Fan and Xinxia. A golden glow burst out freely. Zhao Manyan adeptly controlled the light to form a barrier in front of him. The golden barrier stood in front of the group. As the shadow of petrify made contact with the barrier, the glowing transparent wall shuddered vigorously, its light dimming. Although the force of petrify was showing some sign of slowing down, the light protection, rampart was not enough to resist the advanced spell. It was on the verge of collapsing. Zhao Manyan knew the light protection, rampart alone was unable to finish the job. He immediately summoned his precious shield equipment. As soon as the light wall disappeared, the shield equipment replaced it. The arc-shaped energy had already extinguished the fire in their surroundings. The debris scattering across the ground was dyed gray-white. Their spot was the only place unaffected. Departing nether shield, Mo Fan immediately summoned his shield equipment when he saw Zhao Manyan in a pinch. The two shields barely stopped the petrify from advancing forward. However, the two valuable shields had also turned into solid rocks. The slightest force would shatter them into pieces. Water barrier, circulation. Zhao Manyan cast a defensive water spell, trying to stop the claw of the petrify from extending any further. His forehead was covered in sweat, clearly showing the great effort he was putting in to hold his ground. Rock barrier. Zhang Xiaohou set up his defense too, knowing that they were still in danger. Ice lock. Ice lock. At the same time, the voices of a man and a woman appeared from the other side. A few thick ice chains lunged in their direction to protect them, clanking noisily to protect them. "You guys." Zhao Manyan glanced at Mu Shu and Mu Tingle with joy when he saw the ice chains. Mu Shu was proud and arrogant. He and Zhao Manyan were descendants of their respective renowned families, and were not fond of one another. Despite that, the doings of the demoness raised their hackles. They could not stand it any longer. "You guys have no chance against an advanced magician, but it will be a different story with our help," said Mu Shu with a cold harumph. "Shit, will you die if you stop acting so cocky? Your ice element is effective against her earth element, do it quick," cursed Zhao Manyan. The defense of the earth element was able to resist most of the destructive spells, including the imperious lightning element, yet it was fairly ineffective against the penetrating frost of ice element spells, as the frost would freeze the rocks, too. The brother and sister of Mu clan cast ice spread simultaneously. Both of them had ice seeds, thus when the frost descended upon the place and produced a crackling noise, the power of the petrify clearly diminished. The demoness face shuddered when she saw that even the two kids from the Mu clan were challenging her. "Very well, I'll dip the fire calamity fruit in your blood before eating it." The demoness' voice was screechy, and due to her psychic element, it felt like a ghost was screaming right into their ears. The young magicians immediately covered their ears when they heard the cry. However, the cry was not just a normal sound, but a curse implanted in their souls. Even the deaf could not stop themselves from hearing the scream. "It's fear. Bear with me for a second," reminded Xinxia when she realized that the demoness had cast another psychic spell on the group. Without the threat from psychic element, Xinxia was able to draw her star patterns with ease. As the 7 stars aligned together, the channeling of her psychic spell was completed. Spirit Ripple. Pacify. The basic psychic spell, Spirit Ripple. The ripple with calming effect slowly filled the disturbed hearts of the group. They were unable to focus to cast the spells due to the ghastly cries in their hearts, but the soothing ripple was like a sacred melody, cleansing the demons in their hearts, including the strange fear they were experiencing. "You dare mess it up, you little bitch," screamed the demoness when she saw that her psychic spell was nullified by Xinxia once again, her eyes full of hatred. Chapter 506 Mind Control. The reason why she was not treating the intermediate magicians seriously was because her psychic element was more than enough to stop them from casting a single spell. To her surprise, the girl with impaired movement kept on nullifying her psychic attacks. She could easily deal with the psychic magician who was a level lower than her if she were able to cast mind control. Unfortunately, she was using the spell to control the magicians, thus she could no longer use the advanced spell mind control. Meanwhile, the basic and intermediate spells would most likely be nullified by the annoying little bitch. Healing Spirit. As the demoness was figuring out a way to deal with Xinxia, the girl drew a star pattern, emitting a glow with a mix of milky white and faint green which transformed into a colorful butterfly spirit. The glowing butterfly spirit slowly flew toward the fiery sorceress. The unique little creature was hunting wounds like pollen. It soon landed on the stab wound on the fiery sorceress' heart. Just hang in there for a little longer. Xinxia knew her healing spirit was unable to revitalize the fiery sorceress, but it could slow down the pace of the fiery sorceress' life force being drained away. The fiery sorceress was floating in midair, her body stiff. Her burning face seemed to wear a poignant smile, trying to express her gratitude to Xinxia. Healing Spirit. Xinxia did not waste any time. As soon as she completed the healing element star pattern, she proceeded to cast the same intermediate spell again. The same glow intertwined on her hand. With a soft push, the healing spirit flew toward Shi Gua, who was in the midst of a tough battle. Shi Gua was already injured after the battle against the fiery sorceress. The healing serums he brought were not effective to treat his wounds, yet he was forced to fight against his own men. He was worn out from the battle as he was holding himself back from killing his men. To his surprise, the girl with the psychic element turned out to be a healer, too. From the way she was able to summon 2 healing spirits, the healing element must be her primary element. Shi Gua was desperately in need of the healing spirit. His burns were extremely painful, to the extent that his channeling of spells was almost interrupted at times. The ice lock he was supposed to cast easily became inaccurate due to his injuries. With the healing spirit mending his wounds and providing him with some relief, it would be easier for him to deal with his men who were being controlled. "Bitch, I should have cast a death curse on you, just so you wouldn't be able to wake up for the rest of your life," screamed the demoness. Not only did Shincha's healing spirit sustain the fiery sorceress' life, it had also lifted some pressure from Shigua's shoulders. Both the fiery sorceress and Shigua could pose a huge threat to the demoness. She had come up with a cautious plan to eliminate all her threats, and all she had to do now was to wipe out the rest of the weaklings. Yet, she never thought a girl who could not even walk would trip her so hard. The demoness was utterly furious. She was forced to dodge the spells thrown at her by Zhang Xiaohou, Nanyu, the brother and sister of the Mu clan, and Mo Fan. However, their numbers had given them an edge. The destructive energies from the Wind Disc, Fiery Fist, Ice Lock, Lightning Strike, and Ice Spread kept on coming. Even with her Earth Element's defense, she was unable to protect herself from all of the destructive spells. The demoness did not have an Earth Seed, so her rock barrier was not very outstanding. After a few waves of the intermediate spells, the demoness had no choice but to summon her shield equipment. While evading the attacks, the demoness purposely glanced at Zhao Yulin, who was suffocating from the grip of the demon. She initially planned to take Zhao Yulin's life, but under the circumstances, it would be difficult for her to wipe out the young magicians without freeing up her curse element. Sinister Spider Trap. The demoness spared Zhao Yulin's life. She withdrew the pitch-black demon. Dark red strings appeared on her palm, as tiny as a spider's silk. Following a wave, an eerie crimson flicker appeared above Mo Fan. A ghost-like spider suddenly crawled out from the gap in the air. The spider was less than 10 meters away from Mo Fan's head. It was extending its sharp and long claws, looming over Mo Fan's figure. The spider's claws were synchronized with the demoness' actions. As the demoness pulled the strings rapidly, the crimson-red silks surrounded Mo Fan's figure and wrapped around him and his soul. The life-devouring silk was able to drain its target's life force away and devour the target's soul, and would eventually kill the target. In a few moments, Mo Fan would end up just like Wang Xiaojun, who had fallen into permanent sleep. Mo Fan was astounded. He was totally unaware that the demoness had set up the spider silk around him. The intermediate spell of the curse element, Sinister Spider Trap, was like a trap spell. Although it seemed like it was able to attack its prey out of nowhere, it needed to be set up beforehand, and wait for the prey to walk into it. Mo Fan never saw the demoness setting up the death trap. He felt a chill go down his spine. The demoness was so adept at using the curse element that he was completely unaware of it. "Brother Mo Fan, don't panic," Shincha's voice entered Mo Fan's heart. Mo Fan clearly knew how dangerous the sinister spider trap was. He could feel the energy of his soul being drained away as he was trying to break free from the spell. However, when Mo Fan heard Shincha's voice, he realized that he was overly nervous. The psychic element was able to nullify the curse element. Once Shinxia constructed a spirit wall between him and the spider silk, it would stop his life and soul from being drained away. As Shinxia drew the star pattern once again, the demoness wore an eerie grin as if everything were going according to her plan. Mind control. The eyes of the demoness suddenly flickered. The terrifying will was implanted inside Mo Fan's eyes, trying to control his mind with brute force. Mo Fan could feel his body twitching. He could hear a sound inside his ears telling him that the demoness was right beside him. Mo Fan turned around and saw the demoness standing beside him without him knowing. She was drawing some dangerous star pattern. "Watch out, her mind control has switched targets," yelled Shigua, who had been lured a certain distance away. Shinxia, who was focusing on drawing her star pattern, did not expect the demoness was actually targeting her, even though the trap was focusing on Mo Fan. Chapter 507 Possess, Demon King. Part 1. Shinxia was casting Spirit Wall to stop the spider from penetrating Mo Fan's soul, yet the demoness had abused her fast casting speed to control Mo Fan's mind as he was trapped by the spider. She was intending to kill Shinxia, who was posing the greatest threat to her. Xinxia's spirit wall was able to defend her from the curse and psychic element, yet it was useless against Mo Fan's fire and lightning elements. It didn't matter if she were stopping or continuing the channeling, she would die either way. "Xinxia, watch out!" screamed Zhao Manyan and Zhang Xiaohou. They did not expect the demoness to control Mo Fan to hurt Xinxia. It was too late for them to react in time to protect Xinxia with defensive spells. Mo Fan was too quick at casting the basic spell Fire Burst. A fireball was simply ignited in his right hand as soon as he flipped it. Mo Fan's basic spell was shockingly powerful. Xinxia would not be able to survive it at such a close distance. The group felt a chill down their spine after learning how vicious the demoness was. They immediately glanced in Mo Fan's direction and saw his bloodshot eyes, looking completely like he had lost control of himself. As a matter of fact, Xinxia had somehow turned into the demoness in Mo Fan's eyes. She was uttering a screechy laugh. Mo Fan's hands were trembling. It was possible that his body was subconsciously stopping him from doing it. In the nick of time, the fiery sorceress who was the closest to Mo Fan let out a cry. Xinxia's healing spirit finally worked, allowing the fiery sorceress, who was on the verge of dying, to recover some of her energy. Her body turned into a puff of flame, slamming right at Mo Fan. Mo Fan's hand, which he raised into the air, stiffened eerily. The color of his pupils changed rapidly, as if he were resisting being controlled by the demoness. The demoness was furious when she saw the fiery sorceress slamming into Mo Fan. "Die! Die! Die! You will all die!" screamed the demoness. Normally, she was supposed to be able to control the mind of an intermediate magician instantly, and even order him to fire spells at his family members. However, for some reason, the kid's mind was a lot stronger than that of an ordinary intermediate magician. He managed to struggle for a few more seconds. The demoness did not know about the focus necklace on Mo Fan's neck, which partially protected him from her mind control. The truth was, the focus necklace was nowhere enough to protect one from being controlled by an advanced psychic magician. Since Mo Fan had 4 elements in total, his willpower was a lot stronger than any ordinary intermediate magician. The focus necklace and his 4 elements made him the hardest to control among the group. Also, he was not worn out like the 8 magicians. The demoness was focused on trying to get rid of Xinxia, yet she had not expected Mo Fan to have 4 elements and the focus necklace. When she strengthened the spell once again to overcome Mo Fan's resistance, the fiery sorceress had already entered Mo Fan's body. Mo Fan was not sent flying by the collision. It felt like a shadow clone that initially belonged to Mo Fan had returned to his true self. Possession, the exact capability that had allowed the fiery sorceress to make it so far into the safe zone. She was desperately trying to possess Mo Fan, so she could oppose the demoness mind control with her strong spirit. The demoness dared to control the worn-out magicians and Mo Fan, who was still an intermediate magician, but she would never dare to control the fiery sorceress, as her extraordinary spirit would simply reflect it with a force capable of shattering the demoness mind. The fiery sorceress had taken over Mo Fan's body. The man who already had fire as his primary element was set aflame. The ocean of flames that was dying slowly suddenly blossomed, painting the surroundings red. The heat from the flames surged in all directions, like an enraged dragon roaming wildly in the area. Flames sprouted out from Mo Fan's eyes as he stepped forward under the fiery sorceress' control. Pillars of flames burst out from the ground before him. It felt like the flames in his surroundings were welcoming their emperor. The formidable aura forced the demoness to back off. "You bunch of pricks, I'll kill you all one by one," cursed the demoness when she realized that the situation was no longer in her favor. Since the fiery sorceress had possessed Mo Fan, the power of his fire had grown significantly. The demoness was extremely cunning. She clearly knew that she no longer stood a chance against either Shi Gua, who was freed from the battle, or Mo Fan, who was currently engulfed in raging flames. She immediately decided to run away. The fire calamity fruit was still in her hands. She could easily get her revenge once she ate the fire calamity fruit. It was unnecessary for her to rush it. "She's running away. yelled Zhang Xiaohou. The demoness was quite an expert at running too. Her speed was fairly shocking with the combination of earth wave and some other equipment. Humph! Justice always prevails. When everyone was momentarily stunned, the charming yet proud voice of a little loli rang out. A net made of intertwining light rays descended from the sky, which landed right where the demoness was running into. The net seemed to have been waiting for her for quite some time. It was already looming over her as she started running. The demoness was totally unaware of it and ran into the net and fell rolling to the ground. Zhao Manyan was stunned. Wasn't that thing the golden light net she used to ensnare the vampire Nidong? It had a strong burning effect, which would leave scorched marks on the prey's skin like an iron stamp. Oh! As he thought, the demoness' cries of agony came fairly quickly. The demoness had been burned by the fire calamity before, hence she was very afraid of anything that burned. The light net scorched her already scarred skin, generating incredible pain. You! I'm going to kill you! When the demoness saw it was a seemingly harmless little loli standing on the other side of the net, she almost lost her mind. She had already made a mistake when she underestimated Mo Fan Sru's strength and determination. Who would dare think that a little girl around the age of 12 would set a trap for her? The demoness was always the one setting traps for the others. Countless commanders and advanced magicians had died at her hands, yet she ended up being ensnared by a light net set up by a little girl. How humiliating! Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw the demoness being trapped. The young magicians were fully focused on the fight, afraid of being manipulated by the demoness' outstanding capabilities. No one knew where Ling Ling, who had been staying with them all along, was. Besides, Ling Ling knew how to protect herself better than anyone else. To their surprise, Ling Ling had been hiding, waiting for the demoness to flee, just so she could catch the demoness with the net. Chapter 508 Possess, Demon King. Part 2. What are you waiting for? Kill her! Ling Ling yelled at Mo Fan. Ling Ling was a genius loli with remarkable senses. She knew how terrifying the demoness' ability to control one's mind and place curses were, so she did not hold on to the net like when she was capturing the vampire before. She immediately fled into the distance after stopping the demoness from escaping. Her little figure was running fairly quickly with the help of some special equipment. The vicious demoness was just about to take her revenge when she realized that the little girl had completely vanished from her sight. It was impossible for her to look for the little loli who had completely ruined her infamous reputation, as flames were rolling toward her like a tsunami. Mo Fan was unable to float in the air like the fiery sorceress, but he was able to move with a wave of flames. Standing on top of the wave of flames, the Demon King Mo Fan was engulfed in fierce flames. Either Mo Fan's fury or the fiery sorceress' hatred had now transformed into a fiery battle axe rolling into the sky. The astonishing fire almost slashed the sky in half. As the fiery battle axe swung down, the air was set aflame. No one will die, except you, evil prick. Mo Fan snapped furiously as his emotions merged with the fiery sorceress into one. The fiery battle axe was like a death sentence falling down on the demoness, aiming to send the vicious sinner down to the 18th floor of hell. As the flames accumulated to the limit, its sharpness was similar to that of a real axe. The fiery axe landed on the demoness' body under her piercing screech, splitting the ugly demoness in half at the waist. The demoness did not die straight away after she was hacked in half. The flames spread from her waist to her head and her legs, burying her in incredible pain from the burns. The demoness screamed wildly. She was afraid of fire the most. It was definitely the cruelest way for her to die. However, despite her scream, no one showed her any compassion. The suffering she was enduring was nothing compared to the pain that Zhang Feng and Chen Yi, the mother and daughter, had gone through. Normally, the little loach pendant would absorb the deceased spirits nearby and refine them into soul essences. However, as the spirit of the burned corpse that was slashed in half rose into the air, the little loach pendant remained silent. Even the little loach pendant was extremely disgusted by her dirty soul. It was better for it to simply be erased from the world. The fire was still burning. The light from it lit up the huge villa, which had been turned into a pile of debris. All that was left was a total mess. The fiery sorceress slowly exited Mo Fan's body. Mo Fan did not feel uncomfortable. He turned around and saw the fiery sorceress' pale face. She was already severely injured back at the Fire Pillar Hill, yet she had still followed them all the way here and experienced a tough battle. She was most likely expending her remaining life force. Now that the demoness was dead, the fiery sorceress was also approaching the end of her life. Mo Fan searched the demoness' corpse and quickly found the fire calamity fruit inside her space bracelet. "Save her quick," blurted out Ling Ling. Mo Fan handed the fire calamity fruit to the fiery sorceress, who reached out her hands and held the fire calamity fruit cautiously. "Eat it quick," said Mo Fan to the fiery sorceress. The fire calamity fruit was the only way to save her life. Now that the demoness was dead, everything would be back to normal once the fiery sorceress ate the fire calamity fruit. However, the fiery sorceress shook her head. She held the fire calamity fruit and stared at it with a gentle and loving look. Everyone was utterly confused by the scene. The fire calamity fruit was priceless, yet it was not as precious as the fiery sorceress' life. Why would the fiery sorceress rather die instead of eating the fire calamity fruit? Mo Fan stared at the fiery sorceress in confusion. The fiery sorceress was still holding the fire calamity fruit, as if she were waiting for something. Mo Fan was about to say something when the fiery sorceress gently blew all her remaining energy at the fire calamity fruit. The breeze swept past him. Mo Fan could sense the fiery sorceress' remaining life force in it. He was so shocked that he totally forgot to stop her. Is the fiery sorceress out of her mind? Why didn't she just eat the fire calamity fruit to sustain her life? Why would she blow her last breath that contained her remaining life force on the fruit? It's only a fruit. She can still get one after the next fire calamity. "What are you doing?" asked Mo Fan. The fiery sorceress did not answer. She gently held the fire calamity fruit in her hands. Suddenly, the sturdy shell of the fire calamity fruit cracked open. A part of it sprang up and fell to the ground. A tiny hand reached out from the shell. The creature inside the fruit seemed extremely eager to see the outside world, as its hand was grabbing out wildly, trying to smash the shell open. The little arm was around the thickness of Mo Fan's finger, yet it had the properties of fire, but was weak like candlelight. It felt like the air of a heavy breath alone was enough to extinguish it. "Is this?" Mo Fan stared at the fire calamity fruit that had been broken into pieces in astonishment. The little creature inside the fire calamity fruit had broken free from the fruit's layer of protection. Unlike most creatures that would be crying in a fairly weak state, the unique creature that was made of fire seemed to be quite energetic. After breaking out of the shell, it picked up the pieces of the fire calamity fruit and chewed on them like a squirrel. Tiny arms, small legs, and a small, round body. The tiny, elegant creature looked like a porcelain doll, and it sounded like a kitten who had just been fed. "It's the flame bell," came Shincha's calm voice. Mo Fan's eyes widened in disbelief. The flame bell that he was looking for desperately had been hiding inside the fire calamity fruit all along. That was not right. The fire calamity fruit was the flame bell itself. The unique creature was born from the fire calamity fruit. Mo Fan finally remembered that Chen Yi had mentioned how one would have to look for the fire calamity fruit immediately after the fire calamity, as it would disappear fairly quickly. It was obvious that the fire calamity fruit did not disappear, but was the end of the embryo stage for a creature that had hatched, and that creature was the flame bell. The fiery sorceress was not just protecting some priceless treasure, but an actual life, a youngling. The fire calamity only happens once after many years, and the starry tree only bears a fire calamity fruit after the fire calamity, which is the flame bell in her embryo stage. Zhang Feng was saved by an aged flame bell, who sacrificed a flame bell that was not born yet in exchange for her life.